we'll talk briefly about the technology that powers Bitcoin, and this is why you can trust it. Now I'm gonna try not to get too deep into the weeds on this because I don't know how helpful a deep discussion of of the technology would be, but it is based on cryptography, and I don't understand cryptography very well. I'm not a cryptographer, but from what I understand about it is cryptography secures things. So like you've heard of cryptographically secure, email and stuff like that, and it just basically jumbles up the message so that you can't decipher it unless you have the code, unless you have the private key to unlock the algorithm to understand the information. Okay, so if you tried to intercept,
it's encryption, right?
Yeah,
that's when we hear
yeah.
about encryption all the time.
Yeah.
Encryption or encrypted. That's what they're talking about.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, like if you send a text, you send an email. It's just zeros and ones is all it is. And in order to decode that string of zeros and ones, you have to know, you have to have something to decode it on each end. And so when I send a text to your phone, I don't think it's encrypted every time, but you can encrypt it to where it's impossible for somebody that received the information to be able to tell what was said. So,
but if you don't have the decoder, then you can't do that.
Right.
So that's what.
And that's what protects these ledgers is the cryptography and protects your account. It's one of the things that protects it. So cryptography is the decentralization of digital ownership. You own your own assets and your password. You can prove you have it. I think this is a really key thing about cryptography, what it enables you to do. It enables you to prove that you have a password to an account without revealing that password to a central party. So right now, if you log into your email or you log into your online banking, you put in your password, the password goes out over the internet and goes to a centralized server that has your password, and it matches up the passwords, and it says, okay, they match, and that lets you into your account. Well, with cryptography, you can prove that you can reveal your password into a cryptographic code, and it will prove that you have the password without revealing it to anybody, which is, I don't understand how that happens, but apparently it can. And that's what makes cryptography magic. And it's part of the technology that makes it.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. You need to get somebody like Bob Janisty to explain it to you, but
yeah.
So as we've already talked about, there's the distributed ledger, which means it's propagated throughout the world on multiple different nodes, and that's what keeps it secure, and that's how you know that the network can't be corrupted.
So tell us what a node is.
Yeah. So a node is like a ledger. So in your example of the tribe, the community, the node would be the ledger in everybody's house. So that's what the Bitcoin blockchain has nodes or ledgers that are all around the world, and they all agree.
But what that means is that there are computers or computer servers all over the world that participate in the Bitcoin network that serve as, we call them nodes, but they're just the ones that are going to confirm
Which means they have to have the entire ledger from its inception, every transaction that has ever happened, downloaded on their computer, and whenever a transaction happens, they update their ledger.
Right, exactly. And so, it's a big, huge, value network that's out there. It's a digital network of value, or, Andreas Antonopoulos calls it the Internet of Money. And so you have all these different nodes that connect together to decide or to prove where value is, which account's value is in. And that's, that's the Bitcoin blockchain, and the number, it's just got everybody's account on it, and you can tell, the balance of everybody's account. The bigger the network gets, the more nodes there are on the network, the more secure the network is too. Because again, if you've got, which is a more secure network? A network that's got 5 nodes or a network that's got 5,000 nodes? Probably one that's got 5,000 nodes. In the case of Bitcoin.
Depends on how it's run.
Yeah, right. It depends on how it's run. But it's in general better to have a bigger network of ledgers that all are agreeing. The more you have, the harder it is to corrupt 51% of them. And so, that's why it's important to have.
Well, what you're trying to achieve, where it's one entity or two malicious entities or however many can't buy off enough people that are
basically
participating. Because behind each node is a person. Now that person may actually own more than one node, but you can't, if you can't buy off enough of those people, which is why, again, Bitcoin, with it being worldwide and being distributed, where people can process really through. You don't have to have a supercomputer actually to be a Bitcoin node. And it's designed for smaller computers, for it to be accessible. Which part of that, as I understand it, that's intentional. So that you could have more nodes, and the more nodes you have, the harder it is for someone to ever interrupt that network or to change anything.
And this is a huge point of contention in the Bitcoin network about what it should be. Like, should it be that way? Should it be where the hardware requisite needed to run the network should be small, where anybody can have one in their basement, or should you increase the complexity of the network and the size of the blocks to make it where you need a much bigger bigger hardware footprint to be able to run
nodes,
fewer nodes. So there's always a trade-off there, especially with a proof of work algorithm, which is what Bitcoin is run on. So that's proof of work requires tons and tons and tons of electricity, lots and lots and lots of nodes, and it's inefficient in a lot of ways. There are so for instance, I mean, what's the efficiency of Bitcoin? How many transactions per second can Bitcoin do? Does anybody know?
No idea.
It's like 6, I think, 6 or 7 or 12 at the most, something like that.
Well, it depends on the day, though, and the usage, though, right?
No. Well, no, there would be a capacity. So there's always a capacity that would change. I mean, there are unconfirmed transactions that are out there in the mempool.
What changes is how much you have to pay to get your transaction done.
Included in the next block. But you can the amount of transactions that can be done on the Bitcoin network are about 6 to 10 a second, something like that. So it's very low. It doesn't have very much throughput. Whereas like on Visa, for instance, Visa can process 50,000 transactions per second, right? So Visa is much more efficient, okay, but it's centralized, and so that's the trade-off. And so you have counterparty risk with something like Visa. They can seize your money in theory, probably won't, but they could. They can stop your transactions.
They can stop you. They could disagree with your transaction. They could shut off your credit card whenever you're in another state and they don't think it's you, for instance. Even though it is you.
This is designed for your safety.
Not that that's happened to me. It's only twice.
Exactly.
Trying to get gas.
Yeah. So what a lot of blockchains are doing to change the technology is to move from a proof of work, which is basically the computer's doing a whole bunch of busy work, to a proof of stake. And so you're staking your instead of buying a bunch of high power computers, you're staking your assets. And in particular, Ethereum is moving to this.
What does stake mean in that?
So staking means you're locking up your tokens. So if Bitcoin moved to a proof of stake algorithm, then you would lock up Bitcoin and be a node, and you would lock up, say, 1 Bitcoin or 2 Bitcoins on your node, and you would agree that if I do something wrong, I stand to lose this Bitcoin.
Meaning that you're essentially putting it up. You're putting your Bitcoin up. As that is your stake, that's your collateral, and it's almost like it's in an escrow account. Where you can't touch it. You don't have the right to retrieve it until something's happened.
Right.
Time period usually, right?
It would probably
6 months, or
it could be if that, which that's not how Bitcoin runs, but if it did, so you would have a node, you would lock up the Bitcoin, and you would get paid, to confirm the network, confirm the transactions, and to secure the network, which is what's going to happen with Ethereum, which we can talk about later, but.